This is an ultimate global podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.
Well, welcome again to another exciting episode that we are covering here, which is a special series of episodes for CXOs, founders and co-founders. But in fact, I think it's a very great intersection between CXOs, founders and co-founders, as well as the government sector. We haven't done any specific episode which can be named as a government sector, but we've definitely done with politicians, which includes uh, one of the exceptional politicians from New South Wales who has now retired and working with UNSW, Victor Dominello, who was the Minister for Customer Service and Digital Government till March 2023, earlier this year. And it's my absolute pleasure now to have James Diekman, who is the managing director of Accelerate Tech. He works with government sector clients on a day-to-day basis. And one of the things that I really wanted to talk with James in particular was how is he helping the government sector in driving that digital transformation? Because this was one of the big things that we also talked with Victor Dominello when he said how big this has become after COVID-19 and how that helped Victor in particular to drive initiatives like Service New South Wales app, driver's license, birth certificates, and endless number of things that he talked about. But before we start with that, James, do you want to give our audience a brief of what you're doing at the moment and tell us a bit more about your clients?
So thanks again, Saurabh and George, for having me. Managing Director of Accelerate Tech. We play in the government sector, all the way from local government, state government, and federal government. We predominantly work on the Microsoft stack, all the way from the low-code side, so the Microsoft Power Platform, through Dynamics 365 and Microsoft Azure. Lately, we've seen a lot of interest and starting to see current projects and a number of other projects kick off in the AI space as well, so leveraging Microsoft's capability for Azure OpenAI. We are a Microsoft partner. We solely partner with Microsoft, which there's a lot of benefit in doing that. And we are about 20 staff in our organization. And we have a couple of SaaS products that we've developed as well that solve particular problems, particularly in the local government and also in the sustainability and carbon emission reporting side.
That's great to hear, James. And I think both George and I would definitely love to dig a bit deeper on your founder's journey, as well as talk to you more about how you kind of built up that team. But before that, I really wanted to understand from you, because you're dealing with the very, very niche sector that's called the government sector. Has there been any major challenge while you have dealt with those clients in particular, and how have you dealt with that?
So I think some of the biggest challenges that we come across is that digital maturity. And whilst on the surface, there's a lot of government systems that we interact with on a daily basis that look and feel quite polished, particularly in New South Wales, and they've done a great job. Behind the scenes, it's a different story. There's still lots of spreadsheets. There's a lot of critical processes that are running off emails, documents, for example. There's no applications or automations tying those things together. So there's still a lot of human capital and time investment in making these back-end processes work efficiently. So there's a lot of bottlenecks that we see in that. There's still red tape and process that you have to adhere to for any solution that we develop as well. I wouldn't say it's overbearing. It's pretty standard in the government and enterprise landscape. But yeah, it's always challenging coming in and understanding these business processes and how disparate some of them are, and how many teams and staff are working on them. And it's our job to identify those, to re-engineer those processes and transform them with these digital solutions that we build on the Microsoft platform.
Yep. And many, many years ago, James, a lot of the times when you would ask anyone, digital and government might not go in the same line. And if it
Mm.
goes, people might say that's ironical. That's not possible. But
Yeah.
but after what happened in COVID-19 time, when people were forced to do things digitally, they had no choice, and that's how a lot of projects got boosted up in digital space. Do you see the COVID-19 was one of the reasons because of which digital kind of boomed even more in the government sector? And how do you see this kind of digital transformation moving forward in this sector?
Absolutely, it caught everyone off guard, as we're all aware of, and there was a lot of funding that was diverted very quickly to government agencies that had a customer-facing role in our society. That yeah, we're not. We are seeing in different jurisdictions, but we are seeing changes in what's being funded at the moment. Over the last sort of 18 months, we've seen a lot of investment go into the New South Wales reconstruction with things like bushfires and floods, and making sure that citizens can request help and get funds for if they've been impacted. And so there's been projects around those. But yeah, it's definitely, we've seen an uptick since COVID for these low code solutions as well. What I think is synonymous with government organisations is large programs of work and enterprise scale projects that you hear about in the media that run over time, over budget. They have the auditing agencies get in there and ask what's happened and what's going on, and that has certainly opened up opportunity for organizations like ours, who we're more nimble, more agile, and we develop on platforms that make it easier for developing even enterprise scale applications in a shorter amount of time with less waste. So it's it's now about, what we're seeing is doing more with less and being more efficient with the tools and the systems and the budgets that these government agencies have on hand, and um, saving money for them in the longer term, which is what we all want to achieve, is a better outcome for the taxpayer.
Yep. Absolutely. So, George, we have had two special guests in the government sector that we invited before, and now we have got somebody who is helping the governments to become more digital. Do you have any dicey questions for James
Not dicey at this stage.
to put him in a bit of spot of
So,
bother?
so the topic of digital transformation covers such an array. Is there a particular area that you're working in with? Are you into the administration area? Are you into like the Internet of Things? Are you in? What's your space that you're working in?
So our sweet spot is in the line of business applications. So things that the departments or divisions or branches are using at the moment, or systems or processes that they've currently got. It's transforming and uplifting those, digitizing those, so that the information that they now capture is, I mean, it was digital in the first place. It just really wasn't in a structured system of record. Um, it would be in multiple spreadsheets that don't talk to each other. When you have scenarios like that, it's harder to draw information out of that. It's harder to automate that data and create efficiencies with workflows. So that's been sort of our sweet spot for some time. And then once that information is captured in these digital systems of record, it's then, okay, how do we automate these processes? How do we leverage that data to send approvals, for example, or kick off other notification workflows that might generate a document, for example, so it saves someone having to do that manually themselves. And then once those processes are automated, well, you can then take that further by reporting on that data, relating it to other systems, interacting with it with chatbots, asking questions of your data I mean, that's going up more up the maturity scale, but it all starts with how do we digitize and capture this data in a system of record, structure it, build some common processes around it, and then from there, you can take it up the value chain. So that's been our sweet spot. And more recently, we've seen an explosion of AI, and you say before, government is kind of a laggard in this area, but we're working with some government agencies that are really on the front foot and embracing AI services for their staff. And it's not using ChatGPT. A lot of that is banned in government organisations because it's not secure, and the data is going offshore, and it's not in the Australian jurisdiction. But Microsoft has a service where that data is homed within the Australian geo region, and they can still get the same benefit as what they can if they were to interact with ChatGPT. So again, that's further taking these line of business use cases and automating those to free up people's time.
So I did some work with councils a while back, a good few years back now. And what I found was the resistance. The IT department, they're like, yay, I've got new toys and let's do all of this. And then the department that they were trying to help was, yay, let's not, because I'm set in my ways and all of that. Is that,
yeah?
Are you working with the departments, with the IT department, or are you actually getting them all to talk to one another and play nice?
So we have a specific solution for councils that solves some integration challenges around planning data. We've built an integration platform called ePlanning.io that effectively connects the New South Wales State Planning Portal from the Department of Planning through to local government systems. And local government property and rating systems, there's three big ERP systems. You've got Technology One, Civica Authority, and Info Pathway, and they're very different in their architecture, and rightly so. They're architected from the ground up, and they're many years old. IT is the general entry point into those organisations, and that's who we have the first conversations with. But then we quickly start working with the planners and the people who look after planning policy, assessors, people working in the development applications and whatnot. So it's a mixed team between our team, IT, and the planners. And yes, there is a lot of legacy process, and this is how we do things. And that change management aspect of it is crucial to get these planners with sometimes very, very long processes, and this is all based off policy and legislation of all the things they have to do to approve a property or approve a development application. There's been some challenges there, but we've got a very good team that we have built. 3 of them are from council, who we've hired directly out of council, so they know that environment very well. They're used to working in that landscape. They know the challenges. They know the language. So they've been very good at steering those projects and keeping them on the right track. And I think we're one of the only vendors that has successfully gone live. We've got the most number of councils that went live with that solution and achieved that integration milestone, which is fantastic.
Very good. And is it your intention to stay where you are, or is there transferable technology and product service that you can then take into the business world other than councils, or are you just targeting government? Sorry.
So that solution I spoke about before, that integration platform, that is very much targeted at local governments. We have plans, and they're in motion at the moment, to expand that out into complementary and supplementary product offerings. And this is through conversations that we have with council around pain points and technologies that are very out of date. They're out of support, end of life. They don't work properly. They're crashing often. So we've launched a new product, a development application tracker, So if you were to go to a council website and type in a property address to see if it's, maybe you've seen a development application notice on a fence in your neighbourhood, you go to the website and you look that up. We've developed a solution for that. We've got a couple of councils who are leveraging that at the moment. That leverages our integration as well. So that's a complementary, our new product line that's in addition to that integration platform. And then there's some other solutions that that are on the roadmap for development. So it's for us expanding that ecosystem, providing value to our council customers, giving them better experience, better, more modern tools as well, so they don't need to rely on expensive developers to maintain and manage these systems that they're currently using at the moment. But on the state government side, over time we have developed repeatable IP and accelerators of common applications that solve challenges or manage common processes within those government organisations. So what you'll find in government is that even between different jurisdictions, it's generally speaking, the processes are fairly similar but nuanced for that, either that particular agency, or maybe there's different nuances in Queensland versus New South Wales. So now we have a base layer solution that we've developed for one. Well, we can go and take that to another government agency, and they get a benefit out of that because we don't have to re-engineer and build the thing from scratch. There's a starting point there. So there's what we're seeing is a lot of the repeatable IP is very transferable, and it's solves and speeds up a lot of the delivery and the complexities that you typically have starting from scratch. And I think it's expanding out those common use cases further as they come.
Right. Over to you, Sarah.
While you're delivering some of the technology, I'm sure that the key stakeholder here can also be citizens or the customers who sometimes might be using that technology. What's the role of them also getting more technologically aware with all the recent tech savvy things that are coming up in the market? Do you see that as a barrier?
No, I think now, is in this day and age, as citizens, we expect digital services. We expect a portal that we can log into, and Service New South Wales is a great example of that. We can log in and we can take action on things, whether it's registering an e-tag or unfortunately paying for fines or doing anything around registration. Right? It's all in a one-stop shop. There are other portals that you'll notice that you've been into Service New South Wales that jump out into other systems, but generally speaking, it's you're authenticated and you can use those. As citizens, I mean, they're not generally speaking involved in any of the development that we do. We have developed a number of systems that are citizen facing, and there is more consideration taken on those projects with regards to design, look and feel, the data that we're capturing, why we're capturing that data, giving them the ability to opt out. So it's putting in those sort of controls that citizens expect in digital systems, and importantly, not trying to develop everything up front. It's releasing these incrementally and then adding capability as we go on, as the team and the process and the tool matures and feedback starts coming in as well.
I also wanted to, you to take us through your journey as a founder, since we are also talking about founders and co-founders, and we would love to know, how did you come up with this idea initially, and was there any challenge while you were building up that team as a founder or managing director?
Absolutely, yeah. So I used to work for state government in New South Wales, and I joined a consultancy. I was their first employee, right at the beginning, and they were working in the modern workplace sector, transforming large enterprise government organizations as well. So I was part of that growth story, and that company grew very, very quickly, all the way up. I think when I was there till about 80 employees in a very short period of time. I think something around sort of 3 years or 2 to 3 years. So as part of that, I got my first taste of working for a smaller business, and I guess I consider myself as a entrepreneur, not an entrepreneur, because I wasn't a founder and running the business, but I was working very closely with the founders of that business and helping them grow it. So I learned a hell of a lot along the way. And what I saw happening was this low code or explosion in low code platforms happening in the market. So Microsoft, um, Salesforce, ServiceNow, all the major players were investing in low code technologies. And I had a background in doing that sort of development before. And I thought this is like another SharePoint coming along. This is a once in a generation opportunity to get in this space, and I was faced with a decision to either do it with the consultancy that I was currently working with at the moment, or go out on my own. And I ultimately decided to take the chance and go out on my own and self fund business. And there was someone else that I used to I worked with at the time, who was my co-founder, Edward, and he'd been in this space for quite a while as well. And we started chatting, and we're quite aligned on a number of things. And we decided to jump into bed together, as they say. And it was quite challenging starting a business. We started it in 2020, right in the middle of COVID, and you don't know if you never really know if it's going to be successful or not. And one bit of advice that I sort of take with me and that helped make the decision was the decision the advice that my mum gave me around having kids. It's just there's never a perfect time to do it. You just do it and make it happen. So that's that was sort of one of the things I recall on starting the business. We started it, and we threw everything at it, and we made it happen. And we were lucky to land a government client as our first client, and it grew from there. We also had a very good relationship with Microsoft, so that certainly helped get the wheels off the ground. The first 6 months was me out there promoting, selling the business, and as coming from a larger organization down to one person, you've got no real track record or capability in that space in a consulting, services business. So it was really back to square one on trying to get people's attention and convince them to do business with us. But ultimately, once you've got that first or second client and you deliver on that and you do a good job, well, everything really started happening from there. And we got on the right panels, and we're lucky with some tenders. And we've grown the company to I think it's about 20 staff at the moment. So we've had some pretty strong growth over the last couple of years, and I think even last year or FY23 we tripled our headcount. So yeah, it's been an exciting, crazy, challenging, but also very fulfilling journey, and we're continuing to grow. So it's very exciting.
That's really nice. One of the final questions from my side is, if you have to go back in your journey, anything that you are regretful of that can be changed?
It's a good question. I think I was going to say starting sooner. Why? Yeah, I could have started this and done it sooner. But then I also think, would I have had everything in place? The right time, the right place, the right relationships. I think a lot of that came from previous jobs and companies that I work for. But I don't really have any regrets. I'm pretty content with how everything's played out. yeah. I really don't have many regrets, to be honest.
Generally, George champions this out of putting people on the spot on the spot, but I've done
Yeah.
that today. So I've championed this out as well, of putting you in a spot of bother and asking you a tough question. What do you have to say on that, George?
Well, number one, you've obviously learnt from the best, Sarab, so that's good to see. James, I have a standard question for all techos for the next, probably the next 6 years, but certainly the next 6 months. So the discussion about AI, is it good, bad, or indifferent? How do you see that panning out? So historically, this country, for every job that we've lost, we've managed to replace it with between 5 and 10 others. My concern with AI is twofold. One, we could lose a lot of people quicker than we could find extra jobs for them. You're a 60, 65-year-old, 66-year-old, even maybe a 60-year-old, and you're not into the AI and the technology that the next generation is, and you lose that role, you're not going to retrain easily. In a lot of automation on the farm, the guy now that used to drive the tractor, if we geo fence the property, and we're doing that with without a person driving the tractor, that guy's not going to suddenly go and learn to be a bank manager, or we hope not anyway.
Yep.
So that's one area. But then, if we think that all AI is bad, people forget that's one of the first introductions of AI. Calculator is nothing more than automated technology. So where do you see it? What's your thoughts on it?
So, like you said with the calculator, there's, we saw with the personal computer, the internet, social media, smartphones, there's been many major shifts in technology, and there'll be many, obviously, that'll continue to come into the future. AI is a very prolific and fundamental technology that's, I think, arrived in its, this generative AI that we're seeing a lot quicker than anyone expected. And yes, I think it's taken some people off guard. There's the natural early reaction that we're seeing is, oh my God, it's going to take jobs, or it's going to take my job. And I don't believe that's the case. And I was at a Gartner conference. Gartner is an IT research firm. They had some interesting data that they shared at that conference, and it was basically the message was that around 70 to 80% of CEOs were they're now using AI, or deciding to use AI for growth. So to grow their current organizations, not to reduce headcount and save money. So what does that mean? It means infusing the organization with AI capabilities, co-pilots, right? Things that can help me achieve my tasks in a more efficient way, that I can do work quicker, that it can unlock me to take on new things and look into new areas of opportunities. So that I think is what we'll see more of, versus people losing their jobs en masse for AI. I think we're still very far away from autonomous AGI based tools or agents completely replacing people's jobs. It will be slower than what we all think, and I think it's been a knee jerk reaction, and rightly so. If you spend any time on these AI tools and Chat GPT, and you watch videos of what it can do, it's pretty incredible. And that kind of seemingly, for a lot of people, came out of nowhere late last year. But it's the complementary the complementary benefits that I think we'll see. And the message I'd give to anyone is start spending some time with these tools. It's the people who use AI in their jobs will be the ones that are have the longer term success versus the ones that don't. They're the ones. If you dig your head in the sand and don't use these tools, then you're I think more at risk of potentially your job being taken away by AI and automation.
I did a talk several years ago, and I said exactly the same thing about smart city and blockchain. Everybody that wanted to throw their hands up and see it as the work of the devil, you can't ignore it. It's coming. So if you don't have a strategy, one way or the other, you're going to be impacted by it.
Yeah, it's interesting
And
times.
and I think that's where the role of regularly upskilling yourself and training yourself and keeping yourself up to date with the new technologies is getting so much important. Not only for us as individuals, but also for organizations to make sure that the employers do we have, are they really equipped enough to do their job? If they are not, what are we doing to train them? How are we kind of tracking their learning progress? I sell a system outside of this podcast. James, you know about that. I think that's a wonderful example of how technologies such as that can be beneficial for organizations who use Microsoft Teams, which you also partner with. My final question before we end today's episode: how do you see the role of the soft elements as well? We are talking about technology, AI, and all these things. James, you and I have had this discussion before on LinkedIn over a text message, that how important it is to build your personal brand, and also the role of networking. Being a founder yourself, do you see building a personal brand and networking with people, making meaningful connections that really help you in the long run?
Absolutely. So people resonate with you as a person more than your company. They care more about you than what your company is pushing or selling. So having that personal brand and being a key person of influence, I think is very important, and will attribute to success in any organization that you work in. People want to do business with other like-minded people, right? They build those relationships. They'll if you look at some of the followers of key of big organizations that we're all very familiar of, Virgin, for example. You look at how many people follow Virgin versus Richard Branson, there's a huge difference there in millions of people. If you think of Richard Branson, you think of Virgin. Same goes for Apple and Tim Cook. He's got way more followers than the actual company does itself. That's all built off that personal brand. So it's very important in this day and age, and completely agree.
It's interesting, sideline of where you went there, but it's interesting that you mentioned Richard Branson as an example, because I was talking to somebody who's involved with bringing Richard Branson out here later on in the year, and I may have a fantastic offer for our audience if they'd like to attend the Richard Branson Day. So I actually set it up for another networking group, but I'm glad you mentioned that, because you've just given me an idea to talk to Sarab about. And for me, I was delighted when the guy rang me because he needed my help on some ideas, because it gave me an opportunity to find out that Richard Branson's coming, and I'm very much a fan of his and the way he does business.
Yeah, and with that event, I mean, if it was an event for Virgin versus Richard Branson, you'd have a very different turnout, I think, in terms of the
100%.
numbers. So that is very much based on his personal brand. I mean, he pushes the boundaries on marketing and PR and events, but yeah, look, people, you'll build more of an audience on your personal brand than trying to do that through your company.
Yeah.
And I think the question, it always comes up in front of me, and I keep on telling a lot of people as well, that no matter how much AI or technology might come into the picture, the one thing which can't replace you is your own personal brand, and what you do
Exactly.
outside of your work to kind of build that out. I strongly believe in that, and I try to follow that in my personal life. And I know a lot of other people also try to do that in their ways. But I think this is what people need to understand. The things that you do beyond your 9 to 5, it's very important. Some people, they don't understand the value of that. Some people
Hmm.
do. Yeah, and I think this is something. This is a topic which is very close to my heart, and I try to make sure that I can impart that education to others as well, who are not doing that, who don't consider that personal brand is important. Because what happens after 5 years if you don't have your company? It's your personal brand which is always there, even after 5 years or 10 years, if you want to build something of your own.
If
Absolutely. Yeah.
people want people to invest in them, those people have to know what you're invested in. So if you want me to invest in you, I need to know what you're invested in. And that's not from a business side of it, it's from a morals, an ethics, a visionary, a way of doing business. Because I'm not backing the business, I'm backing whoever's running the business. Businesses are
Yep.
businesses.
Yep. Yep.
If anybody
Couldn't agree
hasn't
more.
worked that out, if we'd had a bit of better idea of what Mr. Joyce was invested in, maybe Qantas wouldn't be in the situation it's in at the moment.
Yep.
And that's, you know, that's something that there was an incredible organisation with an incredible reputation, and the way he's gone about it, effectively in 24 months has just brought on. Nobody's going to talk about what he built up. We're all going to talk about what got destroyed.
Yeah, that's what people remember.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Yeah,
so much, James.
yeah.
Yep, you had any final points?
I was just going to add. I mean, even in a professional sense, so not in a business context, your personal brand, that's something you can invest in and bank on, and that's something you can take from organization to organization, and yeah, you will be much more marketable and in demand having a stronger personal brand. Whether it's doing events like you do, Sarab, or blogging, or you putting videos or content out to YouTube. You're making yourself far more desirable for future employers.
And I think that's something which people can always understand. There can be different elements to personal branding. A lot of the times people can see you as an expert in artificial intelligence, or whenever I talk to James, I think he's the perfect man for artificial intelligence or anything related to Microsoft. Let's go to James for that. I think George is the perfect guy who can do business coaching. He can. He's got a good connection with foundations. He's also a great person in BNI. Everyone knows him in BNI. If you want to talk anything regarding BNI, get in touch with George Mavros. And
Yeah.
similarly with podcasting. So, I was having a conversation in our company as well when they talked about what's your personal aim, what's your personal goal for the next 1 year. I said, whenever people talk about podcast or whenever people talk about meetups, they should know there is a guy who's organizing walks, or there's a guy who's
Yep.
organizing podcasts. So they should know my name in that case or in that bracket. And I think that's something which everyone needs to do from their side if they really need to create an impact. But thank you so much, James. Really appreciate your time. this evening. And
Thank you.
we learned a lot of things in the government sector. I'm sure that there's going to be a lot more engagement when we put this episode out on our LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. It was a good chat.
This is an Ultimate Global Podcast. Hello, and welcome to our special weekly podcast on trending international and social affairs. You're listening to Saurabh Kora and George Mavros from Sydney.